Pat, let me just start off by, first of all, congratulating you on some very prestigious honors that you got this year. Baseball Americans, Executive of the Year, Major League Executive of the Year, and the Sporting News as well, Executive of the Year. And that's really, to me, pretty impressive because that's voted on by your peers, fellow GMs, so that has to make you feel pretty good.
It makes me feel very good for the organization because I view these really, Mick, as organizational awards. Really, I don't think that I'd be honored if it wasn't for the people that are behind me, our manager, our coaching staff, our players, our scouts, our player development people. They're the people that all make this come about. So really, I view these awards that we receive from the different publications as organizational awards.
You're an interesting study, Pat, because you retired from 18 years in baseball in 1994 after your general manager stint with the Toronto Blue Jays. And yet since that time you've done quite a few things. You won a wild card in Baltimore, you went to the playoffs, you've had a couple of championship teams, you've played, you're general manager for the Mariners, and you've won an unprecedented 116 games this year. What kind of a retirement is that? Is that a hobby, or what is this?
You know what?
Money? What's the deal?
I never really viewed this this occupation that I have as a job. I mean, I really viewed it as fun. Each and every day that we come to the office, there's a new challenge that's there, be it our player development, our scouting, or major league players. It's a challenge every day. So maybe it's a hobby, but I've never really I viewed it as something that I've enjoyed. There's never a time that I've awakened in the morning that I didn't want to get to the office.
You know, you're not only a man who is a manager and runs a professional baseball team, but you're also a player. You played. Give us a little background of your history as a player.
Well, I think you had a little more ability than I did.
I don't think so.
I was in the minor league system, Baltimore, for 5 years. Played under a couple of really managers that all three managed in the big leagues: Clyde King, Darrell Johnson, and Earl Weaver. And I played 5 years, and really at the end of my third year, I started having some arm trouble. And so after my fifth year, I said, you know, I'm kind of stuck. I'm kind of log jammed, and I think I'm going to go back to school and be a coach. So I decided to go back to SC and get a degree and become a coach. And Paul Richards, who I was with in Baltimore in a couple of spring trainings, called me and said, hey, you want to go down to Houston? He was a general manager and work in scouting and development. So in 1963, I went down and worked for him, and was there 11 years. Then the Yankees, Toronto, Baltimore, and now the Mariners.
Playing baseball is something that had to prepare you as well for the job you're doing. How was being a player, how does that help you do the job as a general manager? Well,
you know what? It helps me understand the players. I mean, the players on the field, they have needs, they have emotions. So I was on the field, and I knew on the field the things that I liked and the things I didn't like. You know, the manager, usually in those days, he never talked to you unless it was a reprimand. There was very little praising went on. You know, you were supposed to be able to do things right, and if you didn't do them right, then you got chewed out. And so, you know, I never liked that style. So when I got into this end of it, I said, you know, we got to be positive people. We got to enforce the things that we believe in. We got to really direct ourselves on the positive aspect of a player and to build this player up. Because if the player doesn't believe in himself, who isn't going to believe in him?
Right fielder, Ichiro Suzuki.
Ichiro's really an artist, I'll tell you. He's unbelievable. I mean, he almost directs where the ball is going to go. Sort of like playing tennis, and you're lobbing, running your guy all over the court. He kind of lobs the ball and runs the guys all over the diamond.
What was it that compelled you, besides a dead arm, to make that transition from a player to the management level?
I always had a passion and love for the game. I think, you know, not only I played baseball, I was a fan of baseball. I mean, I love the statistics. I love the history of baseball. So not only was I a player, I really enjoyed baseball and that aspect of it. So it was an easy transition. I wouldn't say it was an easy transition because I think there's a withdrawal period you go through from going from a player to the front office. There is a withdrawal period you have to go through, but once I got through that, I felt very comfortable in player development and scouting.
Mm-hmm. Ken Rosenthal, who is with the Sporting News, NBC, the Sporting News, wrote an article about you, and I would like to read a quote and have you respond to that just a bit. Here it is. It says, "Any rotisserie-playing fool can assemble a team of all-stars. Seattle Mariners general manager Pat Gillick did something far more difficult in 2001. He assembled 25 interlocking parts, a model of baseball efficiency, a winning machine." The word teamwork is oftentimes overused and underutilized in both businesses and sports today. So talk a little bit about your concept of teamwork.
Well, this team that the last 2 seasons that we've had in Seattle, 2000 and the 01 team, really they were put together by everyone in the organization. I can't be every place, every moment, and our player development people, Roger Youngward, Benny Looper, Kenny Compton, they're the eyes and ears for me, and consequently we sit down and we make the decisions. Our scouts make the decisions on who we're going to acquire and who we're not going to acquire. All we ask for them is the proper information, the proper evaluation, and that makes our job easier. But really, it's grassroots scouting. It's grunt work. That's what it really is. It's not sitting by a computer and statistically, or as Kenny says, through a rotisserie league, trying to put together a team. It's real grunt work, getting out there, seeing games, seeing people, getting to know people, interacting with those people, finding out what kind of people they are, and see if they fit into our program.
Sure. I've never heard the term, though, 25 interlocking parts when you talk about a baseball team. What you usually hear is he's a franchise player. And I'm sure there are such things as franchise players, but this is a whole different concept that the public usually hears about a baseball team, 25 interlocking parts. I think that's a great way to describe it.
It is, and that's what it was last year. I think that and that was what made our team so exciting, and I think so appealing to our fan base in Seattle, was the fact that every night the fans would come to the park and we'd have a new hero. It wasn't the same guy every night that was hitting a 3-run homer. It was a different individual that was winning a game for us. The thing that I would have liked to have happened, Roger brought on some excellent players. I was only there for a short period of time, but I wish that we would have had the opportunity to really get Kenny Griffey and get Alex Rodriguez into our team concept. Mm-hmm. But it was such a short period of time there that that wasn't possible. But I'm certain that if we could have had Kenny or Alex be a part of our team, we could have been a better team with these 2 superstars on it.
What Pat wants is he wants a player that wants to play for the Mariners, not necessarily the best player or someone's looking for the most money. He wants the guy that truly wants to be a Mariner, that truly wants to play in Seattle.
Way to go, Bonnie!
What is it that you would, about your work ethic, that you would attribute to your success? I know you have a reputation for sort of being ubiquitous. You're everywhere.
Well, I don't think there's any substitute for hard work. There's people that are more imaginative, probably have better ideas, but they can't outwork you. That's one thing that you have control of. You can work, and I think that I think that's one of the attributes that I look for in hiring people. The other thing is I look for common sense. I look for people that got a good sense of humor. I think you got to have a little humor too. Sure. when you're out there. So, and the other thing is you got to trust your gut. Sometimes your gut tells you which way to go, and you got to trust it.
Sure. Follow your good intentions.
Exactly.
Yeah. You have a man by the name of Howard Lincoln. He's chairman of the Mariners, and let me read you something that he said about you. He said you're not just a great GM, but he said this. He said, you're great at just judging people only on talent and character. Davey Johnson, who was a man who worked for you when you were with Baltimore, said this: good knowledge of talent and better knowledge of makeup. That was his comment about you. Could you explain that just a bit, what that means and how important that is to you?
Well, it might sound a little bit corny, but I think that the athletes, they have a responsibility to give something back to the community. Mm-hmm. I think the the community can expect the players to represent them in a certain fashion. And I want to be proud of our players. I want to be proud of the way that they represent our team, represent Seattle, and I want to be proud of the way that they interact with each other. Our players that are together, counting spring training, almost 200 days a year, they spend more time together traveling and playing than they do with their families. So consequently, we have to have a good group of people. We have to have a happy family. We have to have a team that works together, because if we don't, then we can't be successful.
As a player or an employee, what is it that would attract me to your organization?
I think our organization cares about people, and I think our organization provides opportunity for people to grow. And I think our organization is a fun place to work. I think it's a challenging place to work, and I think it's a fun place to work. And I think there's an opportunity to grow in whatever your job might be.
You're acting like a scout.
Yeah, basically we're looking more at the players than at the game. This kid here, number 23, is a boy we picked up from Florida this year, and he has to stay with us or we have to send him back to Florida. So it's a pretty important few games for him.
So how's he looking?
He's looked good. He's had a good spring, yeah, he really has. He's shortstop, 22 years old, and he played 4 years in the minor leagues for Florida, and then we bought his contract in the draft about 2 months ago.
You are, whether you like it or not, a mentor to a lot of executives in Major League Baseball for sure, and probably others as well. How do you feel about sharing your wisdom and knowledge with other people?
I love to share knowledge with other people. Certainly, anything that I can provide and help people out, I want them to succeed also. So absolutely, even if they're with another ball club, I think we want them to be successful. We want the game to be better, and certainly I'm not reluctant to share knowledge at all.
Let me read a quote that you said. You once said, "Every general manager, if he's going to do his job, has to use every possible area to improve the club." Describe for our audience what you mean by that.
Well, there really are about 5 tools available to a general manager to improve a club. And what I was talking about, you can draft amateur players and develop those through your system. You can draft professional players. You can sign players from Latin America. You can sign players from Pacific Rim. You have about 5 tools to find different talent throughout the country. So I think that every general manager just can't restrict himself to drafting players here in the United States or making a trade. He has to use all the avenues possible that are available to him to improve his ball club.
Weren't you an innovator in sort of going outside the country and developing some talent?
Yes, I was. I've been outside in Latin America, but one thing before I got here to the Mariners, Roger was well ahead of the curve, and they were in Pacific Rim countries, and that's one reason that Sasaki and Ichiro, are with our ball club right now, is the fact that Roger and Jim Coburn and Ted Hydes had the vision, and they went outside to the Pacific Rim. So that's an area. This sport is becoming global, just as in basketball. They never used to have many players from Nigeria. I think Akeem Olajuwon was probably one of the first players to come over, but now there's a number of players that are playing in the NBA from outside the United States. So all these sports, hockey, basketball, and baseball especially, are becoming very global sports.
And with Akeem, I heard that they even made him take a cab from the airport. Nobody knew who he was, who could play basketball from Nigeria, and that they were quite impressed when he got out of the cab.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Guy Lewis was, in fact, I was down in Houston at the time, and Guy Lewis was a coach, and they asked Guy Lewis, when did you know that Akeem could play basketball? He said, when I saw him get out of the cab, I knew he was a player.
That's great. You've been quoted as saying familiarity breeds contempt during a long major season. What do you do to create some enthusiasm to keep that morale at a high pitch, at least a steady flight pattern during that long season when it's the grind, when people can start picking on each other?
One thing we've done, we've tried to give players different challenges during the season. Like we have one player, Mark McLemore, who plays 6 different positions. So we've kind of moved our players around. That's one thing that in professional sports now, it's very difficult during the season to replace a player. So therefore, we try to have parts that we can basically replace internally. Mark McLemore can play 6 positions. David Bell can play 2 positions. Ichiro can play 3 positions. So we try to move these guys around, and I think it challenges them, and it's a challenge, and so they don't have time to think about other things, any other problems that come in the club. So that's what Lou's tried to do. He's tried to get everybody into the game, get everybody to participate, and as I said, be flexible with these players and rotate them.
And plus, these fellows must like each other too.
It's a very close club. 2000 was a close group, but this last group that we had, 2001, extremely close. And I think this 2002 group is going to be very, very similar to last season.
That's great. And my mother used to say that familiarity breeds contempt, but only with contemptible people. So if you pick the people you're going to be with in that long haul, it's a lot nicer deal.
Right, and as we all know, there's going to be a bump or two along the road. Sure. Somebody's going to get their nose out of joint, but certainly, it's our job to get with them and find out what the problem is and support them and get it headed in the right direction.
Change is an inevitable part of life. Everybody has to deal with it, whether it's a professional sports team, whether it's business, whether it's your own personal life. You've probably seen a lot of changes in baseball over the years. And that's, I think, is a reflective of our society in general, the world in general. How do you deal with it? How do you cope with change?
Well, you have to be open. I think you have to be open to change. And if you're in this era right now, if you don't change, I mean, you're gonna be left by the wayside. You're gonna die because as this thing's changing on a daily basis. Even in our sport, things are changing on a daily basis. So you have to be flexible. You have to have a wide vision. Of what you're going to do and which way you're headed. But if you don't have flexibility and you aren't ready to make a change, as I say, you're going to be left behind.
Right. And if you're not making changes, there's something wrong. You got to get scared.
That's exactly right.
You have a lot of responsibilities as a general manager. What is it that interests you the most about being a general manager? What do you like the most?
I get the most enjoyment out of the fact that our employees, and I regard our players as employees also, that they're successful, that they're winners, that they're happy, that they have job satisfaction, that they enjoy playing. Because the players on the field, the fans can feel if these players are enjoying themselves on the field. They can sense it. And I think that's what we have to create on the field, that our players enjoy what they're doing, and we have to basically transmit that back to the stands, and that's what happened. It's very infectious. There's synergy between the players and our fans is just outstanding.